What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Welcome in to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. It is Wednesday morning, November 29th. I am Kyle Nabors, along here with our Shaw Local Bears beat reporter, Sean Hammond. Sean, you're back from Minneapolis and hopefully thawing out a little bit, man.
A little bit. It's just as cold here. I mean, it was funny how similar the temperatures were actually.
Yeah,
It was
it's
uh it was a little chillier up there, but
I, I don't
winter's
know if I've
here.
ever I don't know if I've ever been to Minneapolis and not just froze my ass off the entire time. It's pretty consistent.
Well, last year I think they played there in week 5. It was lovely. It was a nice fall day, and that was
That's
great. But
that must be
that,
nice. The only two times I've ever been up there to cover a game, it was below zero both times.
yeah, usually it's December or January or even late November. It was chilly.
But anyway, thank you everyone who's joining us live this morning. We got a Bears win to talk about, Sean. Not too many of those to talk about. Even rarer, an NFC North win. Their first win, snapping a 12-game losing streak in the division. That's really hard to believe. 12 straight losses in the division.
Yeah, I mean, this is a streak that went across two coaching staffs, largely, of course, Matt Eberflus and what we've seen the last year and a half. But it's been tough going for the Bears in the NFC North, and kind of tough going in general. Obviously, last season as you haven't won a whole lot of games. It's good to see the Bears pick up a win. You'd like to see him score a touchdown during the game, but you know what? You got to win, and that's kind of all that matters.
We were saying this right before we jumped on with Jake Bartleson, who's producing us behind the scenes here today. It's amazing how difficult the Bears make everything look, right? Like that was a game. It really felt like the Bears should have been up by a couple scores going into that fourth quarter.
Yeah, and they had so many opportunities. Even yes, going into the fourth quarter, even going into halftime, you felt like they should have had more points. You have all those takeaways, and you set yourself up in good field position. How many times? And they just couldn't seem to get anything going offensively. We can talk about the plan of attack against that Vikings defense, which was clearly very very lateral, trying to throw the ball out wide quickly. Short passing, much similar to kind of what we saw way back in week 1 against the Packers, except even shorter.
Yeah.
Statistically, that was the um, shortest that Justin Fields had ever thrown the ball on average in his entire NFL career, 2.7 yards per attempt beyond the line of scrimmage. Um, so yeah, you want to see them score more points. I think Cairo Santos had a really good day, so that's a positive. Outside of the first miss, you did get into scoring range numerous times. You just got to finish the job down there in the red zone.
Let's get into the game plan, but before we do, really quickly, Jake, I'll get to that question quick. Want to make sure I get the propers out of the way. Make sure you follow Sean on X at Sean_Hammond. You can also find him on Instagram. You can find myself at Kyle Neighbors. You can find all of our content at Bears_Insider. Of course, go to ShawLocal.com. You'll find all of Sean's content throughout the week up there. Well, from Jake, Mark Silverman from Waddle and Sylvie will, of course, have his weekly column up at ShawLocal.com later this afternoon. I'm looking forward to see what his reaction is to that game and what his reaction to that game plan was, because Sean, it was super, super frustrating to watch Luke Getsy's offense on Monday evening.
Yeah, I understand why, why fans are frustrated. We have been talking about how these last 7 games since Justin came back, that's his time to show what he can do. This is, as far as we know, this is all he has. I know he's under contract next year, but like, this is your chance to prove yourself before your GM potentially makes a really big decision at quarterback in the offseason. And I know it's frustrating for fans to see a game plan like that where he doesn't really get the chance to air it out. But on some level, I kind of see what Matt Eberflus was saying after the game. Like, you got a defense that blitzes so much. One way to beat that is to get the ball out quickly. I get that, but I think there's more than one or two ways to combat that.
There's maddening, Rick says. there are several layers to this. Let's start one. Regardless of the game plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like defenses are going to give you different looks throughout the season. They're going to do things to try and take Justin Fields away. Luke Getsy's game plan was clearly get the ball out quick. We're going to use the screen game. Like, I think there's a little bit of I don't want to say invalidation completely. Like, you have to play to your quarterback strength, but you also need your quarterback to be able to execute a game plan, right? Like, you can't run the same exact offense every single week. You're going to get different looks. The Minnesota Vikings were pressuring a lot. I understand getting the ball out quick, wanting to run screens. It's the level of the commitment to that game
Mm-hmm.
plan when the Minnesota Vikings clearly are making adjustments on the fly and you're still running those screens. A lot of times in like 3rd and 7 situations, that's where people start to go, what are we watching here? Right. And I think that's where the frustration crept in.
Yeah, and there some of those plays worked. You got some yards after the catch. DJ Moore had a really nice day. In addition, not only that big catch towards the end, but he made several nice plays throughout that game. But you get to the fourth quarter, and it starts to become a little repetitive. And clearly, the Vikings were onto that at that point. I think of I think it was a second down play uh, before Justin's first fumble, where they ran a play like that, and it was a loss of 4 yards. It set you up in a bad 3rd and 10 situation. Things like that where you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you're not really getting huge results. I mean, it worked sometimes, it didn't other times, but there was no like big play off of that where you're like, yeah, this is clearly working. And it was just a struggle in the fourth quarter. I think they got to find ways to make adjustments in the game.
Jake, thank you for throwing this comment up. I was actually going to ask you to do that. If you are watching live, or if you're listening to this, actually, I should say, the podcast version, you can join us live on YouTube whenever we are live. Ask this question. We got this one from Mike B. Or comments as well. Mike B says 12 of the 21 screens were run adjustments that Fields elected to throw based on the game plan looked. But that would then mean Getsy went over and above that by calling another 9 called screens. You know what, Mike, I'm going to flip that a little bit there. I'm going to say, despite the fact that I think the game plan was too screen heavy, I actually like the fact that Justin Fields was sticking to the game plan and trying to execute what he was given. Sean, what do you think?
I think you look at those videos from the locker room after the game and you see Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus and Justin Fields, like you see the joy and what they were feeling after that win. That's exactly it. They put together a game plan, they stuck to it, and they won the game. I know that might make, the way they did that might make certain fans upset, but I don't think you can, if you're Matt Eberflus, that's a win. Like, your quarterback did exactly what you asked of him and you won the game. I mean,
more importantly, if you're Ryan Poles, it's a win.
Yeah.
Because, like, come on, I think everyone is expecting coaching changes, including at the head coaching position at the end of the year. Now, of course, that could change. Like, we still have 5 games to go. This could get crazy. Maybe they end up with 6 or 7 wins, and that changes the narrative. But right now, Ryan Poles has to be looking at, like, I need a quarterback, or I want my quarterback to go out and execute the game plan put in front of him. Like, show me what you can do, right? I think Justin Fields did a really good job of that on Monday night. I think he did pretty well with what was given to him. And as you were talking about, like, at the end of the game, those two fumbles in the fourth quarter can't happen.
No.
But I mean, those are bad fumbles. And those are going to be part of the evaluation process when it comes to Justin Fields. But man, was it good to see him throw that dagger to get them into field goal range, right?
Yeah, you really didn't want them to lose the game that way with 2 fumbles from your quarterback, especially just because, like, the previous they've blown 2 fourth quarter leads already this season, and Justin fumbled in the fourth quarter of both of those games, and to see that playing out, you kind of just felt for Justin because it's just a crappy way to lose a game, and I think he did a really nice job of putting those behind him. And, obviously the defense played well all night long and got a 3 and out in that final possession when they really, really needed one. That was huge. Maybe bigger than any of those 4 interceptions was getting the stop right there. And Justin, that was the best, fourth quarter drive he's ever had. I know it wound up with a field goal. It wasn't like a flashy touchdown or something, but in terms of like the situation, needing to win a game, that was the best we've ever seen from him. That was his third game-winning drive that he's ever led as an NFL quarterback, and one of them was a 0-yard drive against the Houston Texans last year when Roquan Smith basically set you up with a field goal. And the other was like way early in the fourth quarter with like 12 minutes left against the 49ers week 1 last year.
In an absolute rain-soaked game, yeah. Mike Johnson says, I think Justin Fields is one of the best players on the team. He's talented, got the work ethic, charisma, does what's asked of him. Teammates adore him, and he keeps getting better. I can't disagree with any of those things, Mike. It's all about consistency and reading defenses with Justin Fields. And, let's go to that final drive a little bit here, Sean. Let's break that down. We talked already. Let's go to those 2 plays that preceded it, because that looked like it was going to be disaster again for the Bears. And frankly, I think they got a little bit lucky by not getting an intentional grounding call. I can't remember if that was the first or the second down play there.
Yeah.
But Justin kind of running for his life, just like, I don't know about you, but I actually had the reaction of, I'm sure you didn't in the press box, but even Joe Buck on the broadcast was like, get rid of the ball, kid. Like, just running around. So it was nice to see after that him come back, make the correct read, drive the ball downfield against to DJ Moore. A week later, after what we saw, it was nice to see also they targeted their best receiver in a clutch situation. And here's one thing, I've seen the all 22, and I couldn't tell from that angle. So that's a route where it was trips to the right side of the formation. You had Darnell Mooney run a fly route towards the end zone. You had Cole Kmet come across the formation there. And that's what I was trying to see, was if Justin Fields was actually, I can't remember, I think it was the nickel or the safety in that formation. What I think happened was Justin actually did a good job of holding him there with his eye as Cole Kmet came across the field, which opened up that deep route to DJ Moore. If that is the case, that's a very, very good thing to see from Justin Fields.
Yeah, absolutely. You want your quarterback to be able to do things like that. I see a question from Mark, saying, was that last throw to Moore called by Getsy, or did Fields audible? Justin was given the credit to Luke Getsy after the game. So I'm pretty sure that's what they called in the huddle. And it's notable that they were, the way Justin was talking about that play was, that's a play that they've had since OTAs, since training camp. That is a play that has been in their playbook forever. And I think
Justin's actually struggled to execute that play in the past.
Yeah. And I think it's notable that they're going to their bread and butter in those situations is I guess what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. They've had that. They have failed to execute that play. There's been a couple times where Justin has held the ball too long coming out of that, and he's missed it and had to check it down. But he let that rip, and it was soft coverage. You
can't give DJ Moore that much space. What are they doing?
Yeah. The Vikings were a bit of a train wreck on Monday night. There's no getting around that.
I do think that there were times, like you mentioned, Kyle, where Justin, we saw that a little bit where he was holding onto the football for a really long time. Particularly down the stretch there when you needed to push the ball downfield. So, that's just something to keep an eye on. Obviously, we've noted that
there were a few times throughout the game where Justin definitely held the ball too long. I can think of, I believe it was a boot play where I want to say maybe it was Robert Tonyan was trying to set the edge, and the defender got out way, way wide. And for some reason, instead of Fields just stopping and planting himself and throwing the ball, he kept running behind the block and eventually kind of just had to throw it towards the right sideline. There were a few plays in that game. And here, let's take it. We got to take the evaluation of Justin Fields in totality, right? big play, executing the offense on a weird game plan, big play late. Also, the 2 fumbles, holding the ball a little bit too long. He's got to get more decisive with his decision making still.
Yeah, and when you're looking at the way I look at this, is you have to look at when you're making these big picture decisions. I mean, you have to look at all these games together. You can't just look at what when this season is over. I think we'll look at these final 7 games, assuming Justin stays healthy and plays in all of them. You have to look at the full package. I know you can zero in on any one particular game, but you're trying to figure out some really big picture questions about your quarterback situation moving forward. Yeah, he executed the game plan and won the game in this Vikings game, and that's that's a positive step. We haven't seen him win a whole lot of games in the fourth quarter. I think that's why they were so excited, especially after the fumbles. But I think at the same time, like, don't overreact, don't underreact to any one particular game when you're talking about these big picture things, because we got to see how this plays out the rest of the season too.
Well, if Minnesota is competent, they take advantage of those fumbles too. And this game is a much different story right now, right? We're probably having we're absolutely having a different conversation if Justin Fields and the Bears offense don't get the ball back and he throws that dart to get him in the field goal position. The tenor in Chicago would be considerably different right now.
A lot of things had to go right. The defense had to get that stop, and you had to move the ball downfield. And those, they did go right for once. Things went the Bears' way. It feels like that hasn't happened a whole lot the last 2 years, but give them credit. They won the game. They won that thing in the fourth quarter, and they deserve to feel good about
it. And here's a prime example. This is a good time I talk about like how you don't have to be a good team to make the playoffs in the NFL a lot of times, right? Like, the Bears are a couple plays away from being 6-6. Like, they blew the game against Detroit. They blew the game against Denver. They're really close to being right in the middle of the playoff conversation. And I'm not saying they're a good team. I'm just trying to point out just how bad you get the elite teams in the NFL, and then it's just a large blob of suck. Just different degrees of suck in the NFL.
The middle class is large. Those teams hovering around 500, and against a better team, against an offense that's a little bit having a better day than the Vikings, I don't know that the Bears are even in that game.
Yeah. Let's see, what's Jake got here? What to make of the Bears defense and the 4 interceptions? Before we get over there, I do want to talk about the defense. I want to make sure to say that Shaw Local's Bears Insider podcast is sponsored by Ken Nelson Auto Group, proudly serving the Sauk Valley area for over 55 years. Ken Nelson Auto Group offers 10 new vehicle franchises in one convenient location right here in Dixon, Illinois. Shop a great selection of new and pre-owned vehicles at KenNelsonAuto.com. Now, Sean, we've spent the first 20 minutes talking about the offense. Let's go over and talk about the defense a little bit. Where do you want to start on the defensive side?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can start with the interceptions. Obviously, you got to give them props that they were creating turnovers. And look, 2 straight weeks now, 7 turnovers in 2 games, or 7 interceptions. I mean, 8 total turnovers counting special teams. That's getting the job done. I mean, that's exactly what Matt Eberflus was brought here to do, is to, all of his Colts defenses, all 4 years when he was the coordinator, they were top 10 in takeaways. And we didn't see it last year. We didn't really see it the first half of this season. But man, they're coming on strong. And you know what? Give them all the credit, because they were making the plays. They were catching the football. How many times early in the year did they have chances that they just couldn't seem to corral? Same with, I know Jalen Johnson wants that one back, man. He had a clear path to the end zone.
Yeah, Jalen with some very nice plays, and also the last 2 weeks, two plays that he's really wishing he could have back, 2 pick sixes. And he's making a case to get paid, and then those 2 are going to stick out when those knock a couple dollars off that contract offer, I think, each time.
Days after, I forget exactly when it was, a day or a couple days after the trade deadline, Jalen doesn't get moved, doesn't get a contract. We asked where his head's at, and he said, I'm thinking about All-Pro. He repeated that several times, and unfortunately, if you're all pro, those are the plays you make. I mean, those were potentially two pick sixes. Talking about the one last week against Detroit, the one in this game. Those are the plays that an all pro cornerback has to make. You got to put points on the board for your team.
Jalen's playing really well, and he has been all year long. The thing that's really helping in the secondary, you're continuing to see Jaquan Brisker and
Mhm.
Eddie Jackson play well back there in the secondary. But outside of that, Tyreek Stevenson misses this game.
Mhm.
He had been playing really well his rookie year. Terrell Smith steps in. He played really well. Kyler Gordon continuing to play really well. We felt this secondary was going to be a strength of the team coming into the season, but you had the questions with the rookies. You had some questions with Eddie Jackson's health, staying on the field. Everything's come together. I really like the future of this secondary, and overall, the defense in general is really starting to come into form here.
You're seeing it. You're seeing it. Even like Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker had nice rookie seasons, but I think even just looking at this year, you can see that they've improved since the beginning of the season. They've had significant. I know Kyler missed several weeks, but for a few weeks now, they've had significant time on the field. I thought the best play he made in that game was probably that tackle against Hawkinson along the sideline. I think it was the fourth down play.
Yeah, to keep him short by about
To
half
keep him
yard.
short, that was
Yeah.
a really smart football play. He could see, they were going towards the sideline. He could see the sticks. He knew where it was, and he just, rather than just trying to bring him down, he said, "Okay, I'm going to push this guy to the sideline because if I don't, he's going to get a first down." That was a really, really nice football play. Obviously, he had an interception in that game, so that's a play that stood out as well. But yeah, I mean, those two guys are playing really well right now, and I thought Terrell Smith played well too. It seemed like the Vikings went after him a couple of times, and he played well in those situations. There wasn't any like boneheaded mistakes that you would think from a rookie corner.
No, that with limited time, he's been out with a mile before this. So, and Mark says, I think we have our three technique in Gervon Dexter. I want to see more, but I here's the thing that's nice about the defense and really overall about this roster, and this is a compliment to Ryan Poles.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're now 12 weeks into this regular season. It's easy enough to say this now. I feel confident. We've seen a fair amount of progression from the young players on this roster this year. We've seen guys getting better, guys that Ryan Poles has targeted in the draft. I think you should feel good about the young talent on this roster. I'm not sure about Gervon Dexter as your starting three technique, but I think he's certainly part of this rotation.
I think he's a guy too that you see he's improved. You see him playing better down the stretch. Sometimes these guys, you come into the NFL, everything's new, and it takes a handful of games to like get your feet under you, and then you start seeing these guys develop. I thought Dexter, I was really bummed he got that roughing the passer call against him because that was a really, really nice play. He disrupted a pass. I forget when it was. It might have been the first half. He disrupted a pass right up the middle, and unfortunately, he just finished right on top of Dobbs and drove him into the ground or whatever. But that was a perfect example of like a play that he wasn't making early in the season.
I tell you what, think about the defense. There's not a player on the defense that I feel like has regressed. In fact, I feel like when you start going position by position and you look at the players, I feel like most of them you can feel good about the progression they made. Like Tremaine Edmonds, right? You spent a lot of money to bring him in during the offseason. He had a bit of a slow start. He's played much better as of late. How much does this have to do with Montez Sweat arriving, Sean? What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a really fair point. I mean, you saw him disrupt you saw him get a sack early on in that game. He was making plays. You didn't have a guy like that. I think that does make a big difference. I think we'll have to it'd be interesting to sort of dive into the numbers and see, but I do think that he's making an impact even when he's not sacking the quarterback. You see just how well this defensive line is playing. And I think all those guys, the defensive tackles, the defensive ends, I think they are really kind of finding a groove. And you see that in how well they're playing against the run. And you see that in disrupting the quarterback a little bit more than they were early in the season.
I gotta pull up. I'm blanking out here. What did the Bears start? 0-3, 0-4.
They started 0-4 after that
That's
that loss to
0-4.
Denver.
So they're 0-4. So they're now they're 0-4. They're now 4-8, right? Yeah. So they're
Yeah.
4-4 since then. We've seen the defense get considerably better. We've seen the offense get better. It has. Needs to get a lot more better, a lot better still. But I'm gonna put this out a little bit. Let's say the Bears finish 7-10 with the defense doing, do these wins mean anything for Flus? Thanks, Jake, for throwing that up there. The Bears finished 7-10 with one of the best defenses in the league that improved throughout the year. Does that do enough to bring Matt Eberflus back? Does that save his job?
I think it might. I don't think it's out of the question that it's not a done deal that they're going to fire Matt Eberflus. I mean, you see how in lockstep he and Ryan Poles seem to be, and his defense has gotten a lot better. You could make the argument that he didn't really have a real pass rusher until they got Montez Sweat these last couple of weeks. I certainly think that there's the way they're playing right now. I think they're going to pick up a few more wins before the season's over. And I could absolutely see them running it back. I mean, there's probably going to be changes on the staff. Obviously, you need to hire a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're feeling about Luke Getsy in the offensive side. I'd be surprised if they wanted to replace both coordinators. But I think these last 5 games are going to tell us a lot.
I think so too. You got a lot of people in here saying, agreeing with us. It's so funny. I even 2 weeks ago, this conversation would have there would have been just curse words and fire emojis if we even had this conversation. But I do there's been legit growth from this Bears team that I didn't expect. Honestly, I thought this was going to go off the rails, and Matt Eberflus does deserve credit for it.
Yeah, and look, I mean, last year they just didn't have the talent. I know everyone points to his overall head coaching record, but you were basically starting at year 0. I mean, there was nothing there for him to work with.
And I don't listen. I'm not saying this is a right call. I'm not even advocating for it because there's enough in game situations with Matt Eberflus just this year. I mean, there's been at least twice where he's run Hail Marys at the end of the first half that made me want to bang my head against a wall. So this is not an endorsement on my part of Matt Eberflus, but the reality of the situation is he deserves a lot of credit for the way this team has progressed. If they finish strong, I think that conversation is a real one inside of Hallis Hall. The bigger question, as Mike B said, is a lot of people asking about changes with Luke Getsy. I think that's no matter what happens with Matt Eberflus's future here, unless there is a dramatic improvement from the offense, I do think that we are going to see changes on the offensive staff.
I mean, yeah, like Mike asked, or commented here, there is a path where Getsy is the scapegoat, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, look, if you keep when things don't go well, you can keep your head coach and if that's what they want to trot out there and say, oh, we made changes, we're changing the whole offensive staff, that might be the argument that they go with, and they keep Matt Eberflus and they make changes to the staff. Again, I'm not saying that's what they should do. I'm trying to look at this from Ryan Poles' perspective, from Kevin Warren's perspective, the guys in charge.
Well, particularly if you decide, all right, let's give Justin one more year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get this on the same timetable then. If Matt Eberflus does enough down the stretch, we're going to run it back with him. Let's run it back with Justin. Let's give this one more year coming out of this rebuild. We got the 2 top picks. We got all this money. They've done enough. They progressed. It was a train wreck to start the season, but they both showed enough progression that it's worth bringing this back. Let's make the changes. Let's add and supplement this core, and let's give it another year. I think that's probably the way they're going to go, particularly, again, between the progression and knowing what they have on the schedule to finish out this year. I think they're going to play well, and I think that's probably the way this ends up.
And look, if there's an offensive coordinator out there who, maybe an experienced guy, maybe I don't know if there's a guy who you think could elevate your offense, could be an asset for Justin Fields. Yeah, you could totally make that argument. I do think, yeah, like you want these guys on the same timeline. Yeah, maybe we run it. You run it back and you have Flus and Fields together and you do it one more year and see what happens. At the same time, if you're going to get your quarterback in the draft, maybe you just burn the whole thing up and start over at head coach too.
Yeah. We don't know what the Bears plan to do
We
at
don't know.
quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like this. Rick talking about Detroit starting 1-6 last year and then taking and 5. And what's funny about that is when Detroit was 1-6. Do you remember the Dan Campbell, like the what was it, the knee biting comment that people kind
Yeah.
of thought he was a bit of a
Knock
goofball.
your kneecaps off or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. And then I feel like that narrative has changed quite a bit since then. All of a sudden, he's the guy that unites the locker room, and he seems to have everyone playing behind him. It's amazing what winning will do for you in the NFL.
Yeah, the parallels are interesting though. Like Rick's saying in the comments, they were having this same discussion about Campbell last year in Detroit midway through the season, and look, how many years have people outside the organization been saying, they're going to have to draft a quarterback at some point in Detroit. And look, Jared Goff has got this team in a really nice position right now. Is he a Super Bowl winning quarterback? I don't know. He got the Rams there once. We'll see what happens the rest of this year. But you could make that parallel with Justin Fields and this Bears team in some ways. I do think I got to think Dan Campbell connects with his players a little bit better than Matt Eberflus. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah, I think Detroit is like Minnesota last year. Yeah, I thought that Minnesota team was flawed. I think this Detroit team is flawed, as we saw against the Bears and then against Green Bay on Thanksgiving Day. It's a good Detroit team. I put them in the second tier in the NFC behind San Francisco and Philly, for sure.
Yeah, they got a matchup with the Cowboys coming up in a couple of weeks too. Detroit does. I think that's going to be a fun one to watch to see. If either one of those teams can sort of elevate themselves into that upper tier in the NFC.
All right, we got a couple minutes to finish this up with you guys. We will be back early next week. We're going to do a bit of a roundtable and talk about, since it's a bye week, what do we expect from these final 5 games? But this is kind of a good question to lead us into that, so we can start talking about next week. Which young players are we watching down the stretch once the Bears get back to this off this bye, Sean?
Well, yeah, I'm going to go back to the guy I was talking about earlier, Javon Dexter, inside. He's seen his snap counts go up a little bit since early in the year it wasn't super high. He's made a couple of nice plays. That hit on the quarterback I mentioned earlier was a nice play until he got a penalty. That's a guy that I'm watching. I'll throw Terrell Smith in there too. I don't know how long Tyreek Stevenson's going to be out, but Smith missed about a month with mono and was playing really, pretty well early in the season. I'd like to see more from him and see what the Bears got in him. I don't know if he's going to get a ton of snaps once Stevenson comes back.
I like this from Mike Johnson as well. He says Roshan Johnson. That was going to be my pick. Yeah, Roshan actually looked really strong in that game on Monday night. Was running really well. Is active in the passing game. Again, when Donta Foreman comes back, assuming that he's healthy coming out of the bye here, to be interested to see how the Bears distribute their touches. Is there anyone on the offensive side of the ball that you want to see more of?
Well, yeah, that was the first time that Roshan is a good one. That was the first time that he got a really, really heavy load comparatively to what he was getting before. I think that was nice to see. I just want to see him, have the ball in his hands more. I think that's good to see your young players down the stretch, especially when you're not really in playoff contention.
I got a name. I got a name for you.
Ahead.
And he's maybe this isn't young, but he's at the end of his first contract. Darnell Mooney.
Yeah.
Darnell Mooney's in the contract year. We came into this going, all right, you got DJ Moore locked up. Who's going to be your number 2? Can Chase Claypool or Darnell Mooney do something that gets him that second contract with you? Obviously, it didn't work out with Chase Claypool, but it's not working out with Darnell Mooney either. He is. I do wonder how much. I'm wondering if we're going to find out there's some injury stuff at the end of the year with Darnell Mooney.
Maybe, maybe that's a possibility. I don't know that I'd say it's not working. DJ Moore is taking up a lot of those yards in the passing attack. I think Darnell, he's just getting less opportunities, and that's not necessarily his fault. I don't think he's going to get paid maybe the numbers that we were talking about before the season. But I still think he could be a part of your plan moving forward. Yeah, that's certainly a good one to watch down the stretch these final 5 games.
He could still be a part of the plan. I do think you need a number 2 receiver, whether that's in the draft or free agency. Mm-hmm. If a guy like T. Higgins does make it to free agency, the Bears have so much money. You have to assume wide receiver is going to be a position that they really go out and target in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I love Darnell Mooney. He's a great guy, nice player. If a guy like T. Higgins is out there, you got to make a push for that. Whether that's a trade, whether he does hit free agency. You're always looking to improve. And I do agree that they need a really solid number 2. I don't know if Darnell Mooney is that. I do think he could be a part of the plan. But yeah, you got to see who's out there too.
I have no problem, like, assuming Darnell Mooney is not going to get a huge contract at this point, and I just don't see it happen. Like, I don't have a problem bringing him back and having him as a number 3 receiver. I do think you need a better number 2 receiver, though. Mark says, I want Marvin Harrison Jr. You and just about every fan base in the NFL. Jake working behind the scenes that said Darnell Wright. Of course, yeah, Darnell Wright, another guy to pay attention to these last 5 games. Sean, anything we haven't hit on this morning that you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I'll throw Tyler Scott's name in there. I'd like to see him get the ball in his hands a few more times. I know he's had some ups and downs, but the dude's a rookie. They brought him here for a reason. Especially, if you're out of contention, throw him the football a few times, see what he can do. Hopefully he can make up for some of those struggles in Detroit.
And of course, we all want more Velus Jones on the field, right?
I'm not even touching that one.
Tyler Scott. Rick, that's mean. Don't do that. Tyler Scott hasn't earned that. And you know what? Yeah, I am. Velus has been inactive, 3 weeks now? I think it's been.
Well, he was active the other night.
Was he active?
Yeah, he was on kick return, but only because Foreman and Larry Borum and Tyreek Stevenson were inactive. That opened up a spot for him.
Okay. Let's see. Sam Rush. What is he? I see him got a. Did you guys talk about Brian Johnson as a head coach candidate? We did not. But I don't. I assume he's going to get a job this offseason. Are you asking, Sam? Are you asking if we think he's a good fit for the Bears? What do you think, Sean?
I think that's probably what he's asking. And maybe that's one of those things we can talk about next week, Kyle. When we have the bye week, we're not going to have a game to talk about. Maybe we should look into who, if we're hiring a head coach, who is on our short list.
I think that's an excellent idea for next week's podcast. Let's look at some head coaching names.
Because obviously I know who these names are and stuff, but I want to dig into it a little bit more before I really give my opinion on that.
Sounds like a good time to get out of here then, Sean.
Yeah. Hey, it's fun as always, Kyle.
All right, guys. Thank you, everyone who joined us this morning live. Make sure you do us a favor, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to the podcast version of this, go find it on YouTube. Leave us a comment. We appreciate it. For now, though, we're going to go ahead and sign off. We'll be back with you guys next week. For Sean Hammond and Jake Bartleson, I am Kyle Nabors. Everyone enjoy the bye week. We'll talk to you guys later.